A primeira pessoa que vamos ter hoje é Raquel Prates. Raquel é licenciada em informática, na carreira que acá chamamos de ciência da computação, por la Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais. Magíster e doutora em informática por la Pontifícia Universidade Católica de Rio de Janeiro. É professora associada da Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais desde 2006. Realizou um pós-doutorado em la Pennsylvania State University em College of Information System Technology. Sua investigação é em Human Computer Systems e sistemas colaborativos. Trabalha principalmente em las seguintes matérias: engenharia semiótica, interação humano-computadora, avaliação de interfaces, comunicabilidade, desenho de interfaces e programação de usuário final. É membro do Comitê Especial de Interação Humana-Computadora de Brasil, que se chama HCI-COLLAB, da Sociedade Brasileira de Computação, e membro assessor do Comitê Especial de Sistemas Colaborativos. Também foi representante da Sociedade Brasileira de Computação em FIP, TEC 13, Human Computer Interaction Group, e membro do Comitê Executivo de SIG-HCI. Se ha desempenhado desde 2020 como uma das editoras de Communications in Computer and Information Science de Springer. Participa como membro de vários comitês de programas nacionais e internacionais de conferências em la área de HCI e sistemas colaborativos. Raquel, muito gusto ter hoje aqui para hablarnos um pouco de suas investigações. La palavra é tuya.
Gracias, Valéria. Perdona, mas não hablo espanhol. So I will switch to English. I'm sorry, and but I can understand a little bit. So in the questions, if you have any, feel free to ask in Spanish, and then Freddy or Valeria can help me translate it if I don't understand. So let me start my timer. Today I'm going to talk about the benefits of adding a communicability perspective to accessibility evaluations. So first of all, what does accessibility mean? So accessibility is us system designers trying to, or guaranteeing that people that have different impairments or special needs can access the information systems that we are designing and making available to everyone. And what does communicability mean? So communicability is based on a perspective that the system is a communication between the designer and the user, in which the system conveys to the user the designer's understanding and design intentions that is underlying his decisions about the system. So it's as if the system were saying to the user what the designer would say. Here's my understanding of who you, user, are, what I've learned you want or need to do, in which preferred ways and why. So the communicability is based on this perspective and is the quality associated to this communication. So if this is the communication is well done, it has a high communicability. If there are problems in this communication, then it's a low communicability. And this communication is done as the user interacts with the system, is how the user will receive the message being sent by the designer. We're going to talk about specifically, there are many methods to evaluate quality of interfaces based on different properties and different methods. So we're going to talk briefly today about inspection evaluation methods. So inspection evaluation methods are those methods in which an expert in HCI or in different domains examines the interface used in a method or using guidelines and verifies if the system is according to those guidelines or according to the method, if it finds any problems within the system. So usually the results of inspection evaluation methods are lists of problems that have been found, and they're organized differently. They could be just like, oh, it violates these guidelines or a verification list, or it could be, oh, we found these problems and the problems are due to, and the expert will explain why it is a problem and how, in which context of the system it is a problem. So most of, or the most common, I should say, accessibility evaluation methods are usually done by inspection. So you might have heard about the Web Accessibility Initiative, and they have the WCAG 2.0, which is a list of verification that you can use to make sure that your system is available, accessible to users. And usually the evaluator will analyze the system. See, we have here some barriers, which we call barriers, which are parts of the system that are not accessible to specific users with the specific needs. And we'll list the barriers of the system that he has found or she has found when they are evaluating the system. There are also different methods to evaluate communicability. One of the methods is the semiotic inspection method, which is an inspection method in which the evaluator will analyze the message being sent by the designer. What does that mean? We'll analyze the system and its interaction and try to understand what is being communicated from the designer to the users. So he's going to, the evaluator is anticipating the aspects of the interaction by analyzing the system, and what are the potential breakdowns that might happen in this communication. So the method, the semiotic inspection method, I'm not going to explain the method today because we don't have enough time, but the method has the steps, and through those steps, the evaluator will analyze the system's communicability. So when we're using the semiotic inspection method to take into account accessibility as well, what we have is the evaluator will analyze the message being sent by the designers, which is the system, and we'll verify if there are problems with the message to those specific users that he's considering. So are there parts that are not accessible or that are conveying different aspects of the message than it would be to other people who don't have these special needs? So with the communicability evaluation system, since you're evaluating the communication as a whole, you can look at different aspects of the communication, including if there are problems in accessibility. So I'm going to present two studies that we have done throughout the years. So these have been that using semiotic inspection method to analyze different aspects of accessibility. So a lot of our research questions were also regarding the method, if the method was able to analyze these communicability problems. So we have done two main studies that I will present quickly. So one of them was for deaf users. So we were interested, or Flavio, who was one of our students, was interested in analyzing first-player shooter games, which use a lot of audio signs, a lot of audio to communicate to users what's going on through the game. And usually the accessibility that's available for people who have some hearing impairment are the closed caption or subtitles. So all the information that is usually given to people through different channels to a person who has a hearing impairment is given through text. So what he did at the time was he analyzed the system and he identified different aspects of the sound that were being used to communicate different aspects of the game. So like volume or sound distribution, which means where the sound is coming from, would give you an information where your enemy is, or the timbre. So this is the image that when the person, the player is walking, it changes to, the step sound changes to like a slush sound, which means that there's an enemy on the ceiling, some kind of enemy, and then you're stepping on something different. Or even the tempo, like how quick the sound is, indicates how far away the enemy is. So all of this information, a lot of this information was lost to deaf users. Some of it was conveyed through text, but that means that it's competing with other information coming through text. If a person is communicating through receiving instructions or other things, everything is coming through text. So by using the semiotic inspection method, Flavio was able to first analyze the communicability of the system and at the same time identify the problems with the communication that was specific to deaf users, and examine not only what the problems were, so this is a barrier because this is not being communicated, but he could analyze what the impact on the communication from the designer was, in the sense that he analyzed what kind of information was being sent in the game as a whole through each of these classes of sound signs, and then what the impact was. So what was this person missing? In the case of his research, what he did was he used the semiotic inspection method in communicability to analyze the game, and then he proposed a solution, which I'm not going into, but just in case you're curious, which was to provide visual information that would be equivalent to the sound information being conveyed. So for instance, that you would have an image that would show like a light where the steps were coming from, or a different tempo, the light could blink differently and things like that. So that was very interesting. But our focus was here is on the communicability and being able to analyze the two aspects of in the communicability evaluation method, specifically the semiotic inspection method, and a little more because you can go beyond the barriers, not find what the problem is, but what is the impact of that problem in the system, the system's use. You're not talking about user experience in the sense that the user is not there, but you can anticipate some of the impact for the experience, because then this deaf user would be in disadvantage playing with other players or even against the game because he was not getting all the information that he or she could. Okay. And then more recently, we did another work, which was with the blind users. So to analyze, and this was focused on the method as well, to analyze if blind users, if we could identify problems with the semiotic inspection method and what was the benefits or costs of doing that. So in this case, we did 3 case studies, but I'm only going to present one, which was Tudo Gostoso, which is a Brazilian recipe site. And we analyzed using the semiotic inspection method. In this case, Lucas, who was the student who did this in his master's research, had to propose an adaptation to the semiotic inspection method because the method defines what are the steps you need to take to examine the system but it didn't take into account what to do with the screen reader. So he adapted the method to say, well, you have to do all the steps to analyze the system, and then you have to do the same thing using the screen reader, and then contrast your findings to see if the same message is being conveyed, or what are the differences, if they make sense or not, what are the problems in these situations. So just so we can understand a few of the problems. So this is one of the recipes. And here on the left side, you see the heart, which means you can set a recipe as favorite. So one of the things that happened in our analysis was that many of the elements in the interface, the signs being used, were not accessible to the screen reader. So like these, the screen reader would read link graphic plus, link graphic minus. I translated this from Portuguese, so I'm not sure what an English screen reader would read, but in Portuguese, that's what it read to the user. So this is meaningless to a blind user. What does this mean? Link graphic plus, link graphic minus. Plus and minus is the only information, but it doesn't convey anything about having a favorite. In another part of the system, if you look at the three top elements here, what the screen reader would read was out of list link graphic minus. That's what it read regarding the favorite option to favorite a recipe. Or the gallery, it said gallery sent photo equals visited link. A little better because it said gallery and photo. And the printing link, it only said visited link graphic. So notice that there are a lot of barriers here that mean that the user will not be able to access the information of what this icon means. And by looking at it from a communicability perspective and seeing what it meant in terms of what was being conveyed, what Lucas found in his studies, or in this case study specifically, was that all the information that was associated to the favorites was not available. It was not accessible. So what that meant in terms of the system, the solution being made available by the designer, was that the person, the blind user, would never even know there was a possibility to create favorite, and he would miss out, or she would miss out on a part of the system, of the solution being proposed, which was you can save your favorite recipes, you can access them, and you have you can even create your recipe books with your favorite recipes. And all of this was available, but would not be available to the user because it was not one barrier, but there was a lot of problems in all the interactive paths that led to this part of the system. So the impact on the communicability was the part of the solution proposed by the designer, which meant you can look for recipes, you can create new recipes, you can share recipes, you can share comments. There were other problems as well, but this was a big one, which was you have a favorite part, you can select favorite recipes and organize them and blah, blah, blah. And this part was not at all available to blind users because all the interactive paths that led to it had let's say, a roadblock. So since we only have 20 minutes, I'm being brief, but the semiotic inspection method proved itself to be very interesting to analyze or to take into consideration accessibility as part of the communication, as part of communicability investigation. So it's something that you have to kind of add on or be aware of, because you want to see not only how it's being communicated to the user who doesn't have any special needs, but also to consider special needs and see what happens in the communication in that sense. And for the deaf users, no adaptations were needed. You can just use the semiotic inspection method. But for the blind users, Lucas, we proposed the semiotic screen reader adaptation, which means you have to add steps to take into account how the same message is going to be sent or mediated or communicated or translated by the screen reader. So the communicability analysis. So the title of our talk today was, what are the benefits of adding communicability to accessibility evaluation? So in our perspective, it not only allows accessibility barriers to be found, but goes beyond just pointing out what the barriers are and saying, what are the problems with these barriers? How does it impact the different aspects of the communication? So like I just described, the problem with Tudo Gostoso was that the favorite part of the system, or the function and everything related to creating the favorites and saving them and organizing them, was not available to these users. On the other hand, if a similar thing like, the print button was not available, the impact was much smaller in terms of the user. Of course, they might not be able to print, but still they were not missing out on the interaction with the recipes, if you will. Okay, so it goes beyond, because it can find these different things. And even these examples are related to barriers, but even the communication that's being sent to the different profile of users can be different. And in some parts, it could be thought beforehand to be different, and it would make sense. It could make sense to be different because people have different needs. But in the case of our studies, all the differences were meant that the blind users were losing part of the solution being offered, things that they could not understand, and it was being like a summary of the system was being presented to them, if you will. Okay. And the next steps, so this is an ongoing research that we're interested in combining communicability evaluation methods to take into account accessibility, or see what are the benefits and costs of doing that. So our next steps in these researches are performing more case studies for the methods and by other people who are not directly involved. Lucas was able to involve other people who did not propose the method, but we would like to do more cases in different scenarios and things. And also a comparative analysis of this method with other methods. So we did that with a barrier walkthrough, very informally, or very an initial analysis. And what we found was that the evaluators with the barrier walkthrough tended to just look at the barriers and not the impact that they had on the system or its interaction as a whole. Whereas the same evaluators, but they did different systems, with the communicability, the SIM-SR, which is our semiotic inspection method mediated by screen readers, were able to go beyond the barriers and see the impact that the barriers had on the interaction and how this solution was presented to the users. So this is all I had to say in 20 minutes. Thank you very much. If you would like more information, this is my email contact, our group website, all the publications associated to some of the topics that I have covered today. And also, I know this is HCI-COLLAB, so it's to collaborate, so let's collaborate. So if you're interested, contact us. If you're a student and looking for a grad program, our registration opens tomorrow. So you're welcome to submit. Thank you very much.